Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and officially get started. My name is Jeremiah Lee. I serve as the Program Manager for Support and Engagement in the Berkeley International Office. And I'm also an International Student Advisor supporting you all with your immigration questions. And we're really happy that you're here today for this overview of Optional Practical Training, OPT. This is a new series for us that we'll be holding once a month where we have three sessions, a What is OPT, where it's a general overview, a more detailed session later this week about the application process, followed up by a Q&A session on Friday where you can ask questions specifically about the OPT process or any remaining questions you have. So thank you for being here today. Without further ado, and I'll go ahead and get us started today. I am by myself for this session, so if you do see me pause a little bit, I am just admitting guest or doing a little bit of management in the background. But thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. So as we begin for today's workshop today, I want to first off and start with saying that please note that this workshop is for instructional purposes only. The I-765 OPT application to USCIS is your own personal application. So you alone are responsible for the timely filing with full documentation, understanding the F1 rules regarding OPT, and properly maintaining your F1 status. So please, please review our full OPT tutorial and ask bio advisors if you have any questions at all. Again, this workshop is just for instructional purposes and the application is yours alone. But we're really happy to give you this guidance today. Let's look first at the agenda today. What are we going to be covering in today's session? So again, this is going to be a broad overview about post-completion OPT. So first, we're going to talk about the eligibility. We're also going to talk about when and how to apply for OPT. Again, very generally, we will go have another session on Thursday, much more in depth about the application process. We're going to discuss processing times, when you can begin working, what counts as employment while you're on OPT, unemployment days, because that's a topic that many students are curious about, as well as the reporting requirements, traveling on OPT or while OPT is pending, talking about classes as well while on OPT, and options for you after OPT. Again, a very broad overview today. It's a general crash course in what is OPT. We do have follow-up sessions this week. We will having follow-up sessions on how to apply for OPT. Again, this is a much more detailed process about the application process. That is going to be on this Thursday, September 18th from 11 to 12 o'clock. And just like this session, if you're not able to attend, you can register for that event and you will be mailed in a recording of it. And then we're also going to have an OPT Q&A, which you can drop in and speak to myself and other bio advisors to ask your questions about OPT. That is really for purpose of the Q&A is for students who have already watched this workshop or watched our application process workshop, or really thoroughly understood the OPT website and tutorial and coming with specific questions. So I hope you don't come to that session and say, what is OPT? This is more of a broad overview today where you can ask the specific questions later. The OPT Q&A session will not be recorded because students may ask their personal questions at that time. But the application process session on Thursday will be recorded. So let's go ahead and get started discussing first and foremost about the what is OPT in general, right? So OPT is called Optional Practical Training. OPT is an employment benefit for F1 status that allows for work authorization in a student's major field of study. Um, and let's look at the name of it together first. Optional practical training. It's practical training, hands-on training related to your major, related to your curriculum. It is optional. You are not required to take part in this, but it is a practical training for hands-on learning related to your major. So in the eyes of the US government, they view this as an academic experience. So again, the work that you do must be related to your major field of study. OPT is a work authorization for post-completion, for after you graduate, okay? So while you're a student in F1 status, you can apply for CPT, which is a work authorization while you're a student. OPT is for after you graduate. And you will apply for OPT in your very final semester. What I really want you to do is to know that you should review our OPT website and our OPT tutorial for detailed overview of all this information. This presentation does not cover all the details. Again, it is a crash course on OPT and the topics that I outlined in the agenda today. So let's talk a little about the eligibility. Are you eligible for OPT or not? Well, OPT is available to F1 students. Again, if you're not an F1 student, this is not the right place for you. This is for F1 students who have been enrolled full-time for at least one academic year. That means 2 consecutive semesters. In addition, you must be completing your degree prior to starting OPT. There is a little asterisk here. For PhD and master's students who advance to candidacy, you may apply for post-completion OPT if you only have your thesis or dissertation remaining and have completed all of your other coursework requirements. If this is your situation and you are a PhD or a master's student who has advanced to candidacy and you're interested in learning more about this information for you and your particular situation, please come to an advising session to speak with a bioadvisor directly so we can talk you through the options in this little bit more complex situation for you. But in general, students must be completing their degree prior to starting OPT. You must be seeking employment in your major field of study, as I mentioned before, right? Another thing for eligibility is you cannot have used 12 months of full-time CPT, okay? So CPT can be authorized for part-time or full-time. So if you use 12 months of the full-time CPT, that will make you ineligible for OPT. The part-time does not add to this total. And I do see some questions coming into the Q&A. So just bear with me. I am the only advisor today presenting and answering questions. Again, this is a session just for an overview. Briefly, I do see these questions. Canadian students get OPT. You are at F1 status. Again, if you are at F1 status, OPT is a benefit of F1 status, regardless of your country of origin. So yes, TN is a different visa category. So I'm not going to be talking about TN or other visa categories today. So again, I'll do my best to look at the Q&A, but I'm going to focus on the presentation today. If you have specific questions for your case, please come to our Q&A session on Friday. Continuing on a little bit, so again, about the full-time CPT, can't use 12 months of full-time CPT. You can apply up to 90 days before the program end date on your I-20. So look at your I-20. What is the program end date? You can apply up to 90 days before that. And keep in mind, you must be physically present in the United States when you are applying for OPT, submitting your application to USCIS. And what's really important to note is you do not need to have a job offer to apply for OPT. This is a stumbling block for many students who think they need a job first. You do not need a job offer to apply for OPT. You are only going to report your employment after you have been approved for OPT. That's the only time when you can actually start working, is after you've been approved for OPT. And we will discuss this in more detail today as well. Okay, continuing on. What is your visa status while you're on OPT? Again, OPT is a benefit of F1 status, okay? So students are going to remain on F1 status throughout the entirety of their OPT. That includes when your OPT is pending. So what that means is that once you submit your application to USCIS, the government, your OPT case will be pending, meaning that the government is still reviewing your OPT application. While your OPT case is pending, you are still in F1 status. And that is true even after the 60-day grace period after the program end date on your I-20. So everyone after the program end date on your I-20, you have a 60-day grace period to depart the United States. If you have successfully submitted your application and your OPT case is pending, you will remain in F1 status while your OPT case is pending. With this, your F1 status, if you are denied for OPT, then your F1 and it's after your 60-day grace period, then your F1 status will automatically end, and there's no way that you can reapply for OPT. Right. So again, OPT is a benefit of F1 status, and you'll remain on F1 status during this time. I often get a question, what's my OPT visa? Things like this. No, you're still on F1, and OPT is a benefit of the F1. How do I apply for OPT? Okay, this is a very broad overview of the application process. Again, please come to our session on Thursday where we'll go in depth on this. But an overview on the steps is that the very first thing you will need to do is you're going to request an OPT I-20. Before you get to the step, though, you must review our OPT tutorial. This is on our OPT website, and we have a very long OPT tutorial that has all the information about the application process that you'll need to know. It is mandatory that you review our OPT tutorial before you request your OPT I-20. But the very first step in the application is submitting your OPT I-20 request. We have an OPT I-20E form that we'll be using to request the I-20. This requires your academic advisor's approval. Okay, so, and why is that? They need to confirm for us that you are on track to graduate in a semester, so that making sure this is your final semester and it will be graduating this term in order for us to issue the OPT I-20. There is also a post-completion service fee to bio. Okay, so that fee goes to bio, that is not to the government. And the purpose of those fee is that, even after you're no longer a student when you're an OPT, but you can keep coming back to bio and going to our advising sessions, both virtual and in person. You have full service from bio, and you can always come back to us and speak to bio advisors for any of your questions. We are here to help, and that's the purpose of the service fees, so you can continue coming back and seeing us, and we're able to support you as you move forward. So once you get that OPTI 20, because that's the very first step, then you move on to step two, which is a much more complicated process, where that is submitting your application to USCIS. Okay. And we have detailed instructions about how to apply to USCIS in our OPT tutorial that you should follow. And we'll be reviewing this step in our session on Thursday. Keep in mind though, so once you get that OPTI 20 from our office, you must submit your application to USCIS to the government within 30 days of your OPTI 20 being issued. Okay, very critical that this is. So once you get your OPTI 20, please proceed immediately after that and submitting your application to USCIS. If the USCIS receives your application at more than 30 days after the I-20 has been issued to you, you will be denied for OPT. So very critical that you're aware of this. When you submit your application to USCIS, there is also an application fee to USCIS, so that you will have to pay in order to submit your application to the government. So your application won't be successfully submitted until you pay that fee to USCIS. And then once you submit your application, then unfortunately you're just waiting. And it does take a matter of months for USCIS to review your application. And we'll talk more about this in a minute. All right, let's look at the when to apply. Okay, so this is going to be a bulk of our conversation today about the when to apply. Well, as I mentioned before, you can apply for OPT up to 90 days before the program end date on your I-20. The program end date on your I-20 up to 90 days before that. And then you can also apply within your 60-day grace period. So after the program end date on your I-20, you have a 60-day grace period. As long as you have not departed the United States, you are also able to apply in that window. Um, I'm going to look at this little bit of a timeline for you real quick to kind of explain this. So again, this timeline here is based off of the normal fall 2025 program end date. Some programs have a different program end date. For example, law or MFE or certain graduate programs have a slightly different program end date on your I-20. The timeline for you to apply for OPT will be based off of 90 days before that program end date on your I-20. Okay. But for most students, the program end, if you are graduating this fall, the program end date on your I-20 would be December 19th, 2025. That means you could apply for OPT up to 90 days before that, which is September 20th. September 20th is a Saturday. Okay. So you can start requesting your OPT I-20 as early as September 19th, that Friday before. But again, the 20th is a Saturday, and Bio's not going to be processing I-20s on that Saturday. But as soon as that Monday comes, we'll begin processing your OPT I-20s then. And you are welcome to submit them starting on September 19th, knowing that we'll start processing those on that following Monday. We do have a 5 business day processing time for our OPT I-20s for any processing of any documents from our office. So you'll request that you can request that up to 90 days before. And then again, once you receive that I-20, do not delay and go ahead and submit your application to USCIS. But your window to apply starts as early as September 20th, and we do recommend that you apply for OPT as early as possible because, again, it does take them months to review applications. But if you decide you're like, well, I don't know if I want to apply for OPT or not, and you are still here, maybe you can apply. You can apply before the program end date. This entire time is your window to apply. In your 60-day grace period after your program end date, you can still also apply for OPT. However, once you depart the United States during your 60-day grace period and you have not submitted your application to USCIS, that is an end of your F1 status and you can no longer apply. So it is important that if you're going to apply late, and I do not recommend that, but if you are going to apply late, you must be still physically present in the United States during your 60-day grace period in order to request your OPT I-20 and apply. So this is a little bit about the window to apply. And continuing on a little bit, remember that you must apply for OPT before the end of your 60-day grace period. And remember that you cannot apply for OPT before receiving your OPT I-20. So the very first step is getting that OPT I-20 and then submitting to USCIS shortly after that. And you must apply within 30 days of getting an OPT I-20. Keep in mind that USCIS, the government body that reviews your OPT applications, works in a UTC time zone, which is many hours ahead of us in California. I believe it's 7 or 9 hours ahead of us. You'll have to check the time zone. But keep in mind that they're in a UTC time zone. So please don't wait until the last day to possible. So if you get your OPTI 20 and you wait till day 30, don't wait till the last day. But if you do, keep in mind that they're in that UTC time zone. So I have seen students wait till the last day and they apply at, for example, 9 p.m. in California time. But that means USCIS received it that day on day 31 because they're in a future time zone. That means that they were denied for OPT because USCIS received their application more than 30 days after OPT I-20 was issued. So don't wait till the last day, but if you do, keep in mind that the time zone that USCIS is in. Okay. So this is a little bit more about the when to apply, and we will be going more in depth again on this in our session on Thursday about the application process. Processing times. How long does it take? Okay. Well, first off, remember you have to request your OPT I-20 from Bio. That will take us 5 business days after your academic advisor approves it. Okay, so first your OPT I-20 e-form is going to get sent to your academic advisor who will confirm, yes, the student is on track to graduate this fall. And then once they approve it, it gets sent back to Bio. Once it is sent back to Bio, that's when our 5 business day clock will start and we'll issue you your OPT I-20 within 5 business days. So if your academic advisor is slow on approving this for you, it may delay it. So maybe you want to have a conversation with them and give them a heads up that you're submitting your OPT I-20 request. So there are no delays. But once it's sent back to Bio within 5 business days, we'll get that OPT I-20 for you. You'll get that I-20 and submit your application to USCIS. And once you submit your application to USCIS, it's going to take anywhere between 1 and 5 months. I know that's a long time to wait. So remember, you can apply up to 90 days before. So especially because it takes on average about 3 months, about 90 days for OPT application is the general average. It could take more, it could take less. And it's not uncommon for it to take longer, especially with a high volume of applications. So again, more reason for you to submit your application early. But yeah, it's going to take them somewhere between 1 and 5 months. The only way to speed this up, and there is only one way to speed this up, there is a premium processing option. So there is a fee called a premium processing fee that you can pay at the same time you submit your application, or maybe you don't pay it right away. You can go back in and pay it later. What this premium processing option will guarantee is the government guarantees that they will review your OPT application within 30 business days of you paying that premium processing fee. So if it's really critically important for you that you are approved early, or if you have a start date that's not negotiable, or you have travel concerns, or any number of reasons for you to pay this, this is the only option. It is an expensive option, but it is an option for you to expedite your OPT application with USCIS. We don't have an option for expediting OPT I-20s. So we have a 5 business day, so keep that in mind. There is also the USCIS processing times website. Keep in mind this is not always accurate. So once you submit your application to USCIS, there's going to be a case status tracker where you can track your case. Sometimes students all the time will email us, oh my gosh, it says it's going to take 8 months. It's going to take 6 months. It's going to take 7 months. These processing times have known to be not accurate. Again, it's going to take somewhere between 1 and 5 months, with the vast majority being right around 90 days. So just be aware that there is processing times website, but it is not always accurate. When can I start working? And can I wait while I wait for my EAD card? So after the program end date on your I-20, which for many of you, right, for many of you, the program end date will be December 19th, 2025. You cannot work on-campus jobs or off-campus until you have been approved for OPT, have your EAD card, and you reach the start date listed on your EAD card. So it's really important that you, if you want to be starting soon after your program end date on your 20, that you apply as early as you can, because you cannot start working paid or unpaid. There is no possibility for you to start working. Sometimes we get students asking, can I start working for this company unpaid until my EAD, until my OPT is approved? No, no, you cannot. You cannot work paid or unpaid. You have no employment authorization for on or off campus until you're approved for OPT, you have that EAD card, and you reach the start date that is listed on your EAD card. All right. What kind of jobs can you do on OPT? So while on OPT, employment on OPT is especially for the 12-month OPT, there's some flexibility there, but the requirements are that it has to be for a U.S. employer. No, you cannot work for foreign entities while on OPT. It must be directly related to your major field of study, and at least and it must be at least 20 hours a week. Okay. So employment could be paid, it could be unpaid, as long as it does not violate labor laws. And in these links, we do have a Department of Labor definitions for what are volunteer and unpaid interns, right? So yes, unpaid work is okay as long as it does not violate labor laws. You can also work for multiple employers, paid or unpaid. Can work for short-term employers, work for hire, often called like 1099 contracts. You could even start your own business here in the United States and be a self-employed business owner and work for your own company if it's for a US employer. That means you registered a company in the United States. The work you are doing is directly related to your major, and you're working at least 20 hours a week. So self-employment is allowed during 12-month OPT. It is not possible in the STEM extension period, though. So you all will apply for 12-month OPT, and if you are in a STEM major, you could apply for a STEM extension, but no self-employment during a STEM extension period. So it kind of limits you, right? If you are only able to do that first year, you're not able to continue that during the STEM period if you are a STEM eligible major. You could also work through agencies, hiring or staffing agencies. That is also possible. So a lot of flexibility for you in 12-month OPT, but again, US employer related to your major and at least 20 hours a week are the requirements. What about your unemployment days? Okay, so while on OPT, right, you need to find a job and you will have 90 cumulative days of unemployment during OPT over the full 12-month period. Okay, so these 90 days of unemployment are going to start once your OPT has been approved and you reach the start date on your EAD card. Okay, so when these 90 days are going to start counting down from that time when you are approved for OPT and you reach that start date. So maybe you get approved early and your start date isn't for later. Okay, that doesn't your OPT, the unemployment clock is not going to start counting down until that start date has been reached. Sometimes students request an earlier start date, but they're not approved till later. That means that they're also not accruing unemployment days until they are approved for OPT and have reached that start date. Okay. So again, you have 90 days of unemployment that you can use to find jobs. It is important that you do find and report employment though, because if you run out of unemployment days, you must depart the United States on or before the day you run out of unemployment days. There is no grace period if you run out of unemployment days. You would be expected to depart the United States immediately. And how do you stop the unemployment days? Well, you're going to report your employment to stop the unemployment days from accruing. How do we do this? All right. So again, once you are approved for OPT, then you are required to report your employment, and you only do this after you're approved for OPT. So anything you do on OPT, let's say you change your address, you change your phone number, you add a job, you stop a job, you add a second job, whatever this looks like, any changes you are doing, you need to report those changes within 10 days of those changes occurring. Okay. You can do it beforehand. You can do it slightly after the change occurs, but it must be within 10 days of that change occurring. And all of your updates, phone number, address, employment, all of your changes must be made through the SSU Hub. The SSU Hub is the Berkeley International Office. This is our reporting system that you'll report your changes. So when you report in the SSU Hub, this is going to update your student record. It's going to and also update your immigration record. And when you update the SSU Hub with your employment information, you're automatically going to receive an updated I-20 with the employment information listed on it within 5 business days. There is a thing called the SEVP portal that you may or have heard about before. The SEVP portal is the government's portal. They have their own reporting portal where you can go in and report your employment. We ask that you don't use the SAPP portal for reporting. You can create an SAPP portal account for view-only purposes so you can see what information is listed there. But please make all of your updates through the SSU Hub only. And you can review more about the SSU Hub, about the SAPP portal, and more about your reporting obligations while on OPT on our OPT reporting website. The link to the SSU Hub can also be found on our OPT reporting website. So when you report your employment and you report the certain start date, from that date is when your unemployment days will stop accruing. Travel on OPT. This is always a big question for many students. Can you travel on OPT? Well, yes, you can travel on OPT. Again, F1, OPT is a benefit of F1 status, and you are able to travel. Although travel while your OPT is pending, meaning you have not been approved for OPT yet, is possible. We do not recommend it because it carries more risk. Okay, so it is much safer to travel after you have been approved for OPT and you have received your EAD card. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and I'll circle back to these. The documents you need for reentry while on OPT, whether your OPT is still pending or after your OPT has been approved, are listed on our Travel on OPT website, and we do list the risks of traveling while your OPT is pending. I'll go into more depth about those risks in a minute as well. But please do check out our Travel on OPT page for a list of the documents you would need for reentry, as well as what those risks are of traveling while OPT is pending or in general. On our Travel and OPT website. Also important to note that remote work is possible. So maybe your company, you're working for a US company, may allow you to work remotely. It is possible for you to work remotely for short periods of time. Maybe you need to go back to your home country and visit your family for a while, or I don't know, maybe your mom or dad is sick and you want to go back and work remotely for a little bit. You know, that is possible for short periods of time, but keep in mind that OPT and F1 status, again, OPT is the benefit of F1 status, is intended for you to be physically present here in the United States. So there typically needs to be a specific purpose, or this needs to occur during an employer-approved break for you to be traveling and working remotely at these times. Sometimes students think they have been approved for OPT. I'm going to spend it's much cheaper to live back in my home country, so I'm going to stay there and do this US job. Well, then there's really no purpose for you to have an F1 status if you're not going to be physically present in the United States. Another thing to keep in mind about OPT and traveling is that the travel signature on the second page of your I-20, while you're a current student, that is valid for 12 months. During OPT, that signature is valid for 6 months. So you do need an updated travel endorsement on the second page of your I-20 every 6 months while you're on OPT. Let's talk a little bit more about the travel while OPT is pending, because this is often a question we get from students, and let's talk about what those risks are. Well, there are these risks to traveling while your OPT is pending. Some of these include that you need to have somebody monitoring your mail here in the United States. Okay, so that could be a struggle, right? Do you have a roommate? Is there somebody you trust to monitor your mailbox? You want to have them monitor it for your USCIS communications and your EAD card if you're traveling. Okay, so these are very important things. So that's a risk in itself, right? You may get what's called a request for evidence. Again, they'll say, hey, we're working on your OPT case, but we need more evidence about your situation. This could be difficult to respond to a request for evidence or an RFE if you're outside the United States. So that's another risk. Another major risk is that if you are denied for OPT. If you are denied for OPT while outside the United States, after the program end date on your I-20, there's no chances for you to be re-enter the United States or reapply, even if your 60-day grace period has not expired. Your F1 status will end then. If you're still physically present here in the United States and it's in the 60-day grace period and you're still here and you have not departed and you're denied for OPT, well, you're still in F1 status because you're in your grace period and you could reapply for OPT. But if you're outside the United States after the program ended in I-20, your OPT case will be denied and then your F1 status will automatically end. So that's a major risk as well. Another concern, what if you're approved for OPT while outside the United States? So if you go back to our previous slide about the travel on OPT with the documents required, you'll notice on that page that you will need your EAD card, which is only going to get mailed to your physical address in the United States with you when you return to the United States. So if you're outside the United States and you are approved for OPT, then you're going to have to arrange for that EAD card to get mailed to you overseas to re-enter the United States. So another risk, right? Who knows what happens with the mail? Another concern is about your visa, right? The visa is the stamp in your passport, and it's an entry document, right? It needs to be valid when you enter the United States. So if your F1 visa has expired, you can only apply for a new F1 visa while on OPT with your OPT EAD card and proof of employment. So if you are outside the United States and your visa is expired, you're going to have to wait for your OPT to get approved, get that EAD card, find and report a job. So significant risk here to reentry if your visa has expired as well. What about classes? Classes on OPT. Okay. Well, during OPT, again, so OPT is post-completion, meaning you have completed your degree requirements. Okay. So while you're on OPT, a post-completion benefit of F1 status, you cannot start a full-time program of study while on OPT. So you can't begin another master's program or graduate school program or working towards a new degree program. That is not possible while on OPT. You may, though, engage in incidental study, meaning that's just recreational, not working towards a full-time program of study of an area of interest for you. That may be possible, but there is no possibility for you to start a new program of study while on OPT, okay? After your OPT, what about going back to class as well after your OPT? Okay, all these options that I'm going to talk about here must be completed before the 60-day grace period. So after the end of your 12-month OPT, you will also get a 60-day grace period, assuming you don't run out of unemployment days, after the end date on your EAD card. So again, that will be your 60-day grace period to pack your things and depart the United States. All these steps to transfer or change your levels must be completed within that before the end date or within that grace period. So a couple options for that. You could get accepted to another institution and transfer your CVERS record to that school and then start a new program of study there. Another option could be maybe you come back to Berkeley, you finish your bachelor's here, and you were going to be starting a grad school program here at Berkeley. That is also another process where you would request a change of level I-20 from UC Berkeley, get accepted to your grad school program here. That would involve you completed an NIF, that NIF, where you request your initial I-20. You're requesting a new initial I-20 for your new program of study as well. That's another opportunity for you to continue classes after your OPT. But while you're a student, no new course of study, but incidental study could be possible for you. What are my options after OPT? Okay, so options after OPT. Well, like I said, you have a 60-day grace period after the end of your OPT for a couple options. Well, option one could be, hey, I finished my OPT and I'm going to go back to my home country. So that means you have a 60-day grace period to depart the United States. Once you depart the United States during your grace period, that is an end of your F1 status as well. Another option could be going back to school in the United States. And those are a couple of the options that I just talked about, right? Transferring to another institution or doing a change of level at the UC Berkeley. And another option could be changing visa statuses. Okay, so this means going to a different immigration status, not F1 status. For this, I'm limited in what I can tell you about this. This is something that you would need to speak to an immigration attorney about the change of status, including your legal presence in the United States. For example, many students come and ask about, hey, how do I apply for H-1B? That is something that you and the employer and the employer's immigration attorneys would work on together to submit your applications. So changing visa status is possible, that this is something that you should speak to an immigration attorney about if you're considering this. Other options right after OPT? Well, if you are in a STEM eligible major, then you could apply for the STEM extension, which is an extension of your OPT for an additional 2 years. Sometimes students get confused because they think, I'm in a STEM major, I'm applying for STEM OPT. No, everybody applies for 12-month OPT first, and if you're in a STEM major with a STEM eligible employer, then you apply for the STEM extension of your OPT for an additional 2 years. You must apply for the STEM, you can only apply for the STEM extension if you are eligible and the last 90 days of your 12-month OPT period. Okay. You apply for your STEM extension with your STEM eligible majors and employment. So with the STEM major, STEM extension, you are applying with an employer. Whereas 12-month OPT, remember, you don't have to have a job to apply for OPT. For the STEM extension piece, you do need to have that STEM eligible employer. And you must submit this application before the OPT EAD expires. Okay, so USCIS must receive that deadline again before the EAD expires of your 12-month OPT for the STEM extension piece. I'm not going in depth about STEM today, just as the broad overview of this. We will have follow-up workshops about the STEM and STEM application process later this fall. This process will involve you requesting an OPT STEM I-20 from Bio and then submitting another application to USCIS. Okay, so please stay tuned to future workshops about STEM, but this is all about 12-month OPT, and I hope you're in the right place for this today. All right, and as we're getting close to the close of today, I just want to wrap up with a few major rules that I do want to point out for you that while on OPT. So the first major rule is that you can only work from the start date on your EAD card to the end date on your EAD card. So get that, you got to wait until you're approved for OPT. You get that EAD card and look at the start date. When's the start date? Even if you're approved for OPT and you have the EAD card, you cannot start working until you reach that start date that is listed on your EAD card and can only work until the end date on your EAD card. Also, remember that employment for non-US employers does not meet OPT requirements and cannot be authorized, okay? So if you're physically present here in the United States, you need to get authorized for any employment. And we cannot authorize you for foreign entities. So basically, you cannot work for foreign entities while you're physically here in the United States or in OPT status, okay? All employment must be related to your major as well, right? Again, it's practical training related to your major. It's hands-on training related to your major. All changes that you do on OPT must be made within the SSU hub within 10 days of changes occurring. Okay. So all changes, address, phone number, jobs, stopping a job, anything you do within 10 days of changes occurring through the SSU hub. You are limited to 90 days of unemployment while on OPT again. And those 90 days of unemployment are going to start from when you're approved for OPT and you reach that start date on your EAD card. Remember, your travel signatures are only valid for 6 months while on OPT. And F1 students are considered in violation of your F1 status if you were absent from the United States for 5 months continuously. This is at any point, not just on OPT. Your basically F1 status is here for you to be physically present here in the United States. So there is a 5 month rule. You cannot be outside the United States 5 months consecutively, or this is a violation of your F1 status. Continuous absences of 5 months or more will result in a possible termination of your F1 record. And lastly, if your employment does not require physical presence in the United States, then it's not appropriate for you to for appropriate employment for OPT, right? So again, OPT is a benefit of F1 status, which is an immigration status for you to be physically present here in the United States. So that is the purpose of OPT. So if your employment doesn't require you to be here, then it's not appropriate. OPT is not an appropriate OPT employment. And as we wrap up, I do want to do a quick reminder about our follow-up sessions. This is a very crash course today in the OPT application process and an overview about what is OPT. We are going to have that follow-up session on the detailed application process for OPT on Thursday, September 18th from 11 to 12 a.m. Pacific time. And then we're going to have a follow-up session, which is the Q&A where you can drop in and ask your questions. Again, today I didn't have much time for all the questions. So come back on Friday and ask your questions in the Q&A session. That'll be on Friday from 3 to 4. And then we're going to have additional OPT workshops just like this held in October and November. So if you have additional questions, come back and see us. And we are here to help. If you have any particular questions about this after reviewing the OPT website and OPT tutorial, please also come to a bio advising session. We are here to help you and answer any questions you may have. But that reaches us to the end of our time today. Thank you all for being here. I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time. I do hope to see you in our next session this Thursday, as well as our Q&A session. This session will be recorded, so if you did register and weren't able to attend, you will be emailed this, and this will be as well as the session on Thursday. So thank you all so much for being here, and see you again soon.